Welcome to creating quizzes in D2L. In this video, I will be demonstrating setting up a quiz using the new quiz experience. In this tutorial, you will learn setting up a non-random quiz, pulling from the question library, the difference between random, non-random, and shuffle, linking to your gradebook, populating feedback and what students can see after they click submit, adding in dates and the difference between due and end date, and adding special access, enforcing a time limit for students to complete, and where to add more attempts. So let's dive on in. To begin creating your quiz, before I want to start, I want to verify that I do have my gradebook item created for this quiz. So I'm going to select grade, and there I can see quiz one, and I see I have 30 points. So I know my quiz question values will total 30 points, and it'll be at 10% weight. So I'm going to go ahead and create my quiz. And all you do to begin is give it a name. And here's where we're going to link it to that gradebook item. Add to gradebook, link it here. You may see quite a few quizzes depending on how much quizzes you have listed in your gradebook. Here I can see it's 30 and 10, which I verified. Select OK, and you'll see that that 30 points automatically goes into the grade out of area. You can add in a description if you'd like. Description area is the field that students will see before they click submit. So if you wanted to put in a little welcome message to them, you can do that. If you needed to put in any instructions that they need to have before they begin, you can do that as well in this area. After I've added in my description, you can see you can fill in a due date. I'm going to omit that for just a little bit because I'm going to add in that date after I start working on the right-hand panel. So let's start adding some questions. Again, in this example, this is going to be a non-random. So the types of questions, quizzes that you could have is non-random, which means the questions are going to appear for each student in exactly the same order. A random means the questions are going to appear mixed up for your students. So if you have a question pool of 100 questions, and you are going to be using only 30 questions from that 100, it's going to pull 30 out of 100 different questions for every student. So the chances of their students getting the exact same question could be greatly different. The other is shuffle. Shuffle only mixes up the order. So you have 30 questions. I taking your quiz, I may get question one first, or I may get question five first. All it's going to do is give each student the same 30 questions. It's just going to mix up the order. So again, in this example, it's going to be a non-random. And again, the questions are already in the question library. So I'm going to go down here and I'm going to go browse question library. Once we open up the question library, you can see that I have my question library organized by section, which are folders, by chapter titles. And you can expand over on the left and see what questions you wanted. Maybe you wanted this one, and maybe you wanted to skip this one, and you can do so, or you can select all of them by just toggling on that checkbox there. You can also go through and filter by multiple choice, true and false, or maybe your points value. I know what I'm adding, I'm good with both, and I'm going to select import. When you do, make sure that you verify that your total points here does equal the total points here. If you're adding in other sections, of course, continue and build and add in the other sections as you need. Now that I have all my quiz questions ready, I can begin setting in the dates, and we're going to go all through the right-hand panel now. To begin, let's add in some dates. So of course, you're going to need a start date for your quiz. So enter in when you want your quiz to begin. And what time do you want your students to begin taking this quiz? I'm going to say I'm going to let them start on the 17th at 8:30. So let's cover due date and end date. Now, the end date doesn't mean the how long the students get to write. So if you think your students get 60 minutes to write the exam, you don't have that time within that 60 minutes. That end date is only meaning the last possible time to begin taking that quiz. So here on the 17th, if I'm going to allow my students to start it at 8:30, maybe here I'm going to say, I want my students to make sure they start this exam by 9 o'clock. Adding in that 9 o'clock half an hour buffer from when that start just allows my students to have that little extra time for technical issues. A due date. This is going to allow this quiz to show up in the student's calendar. So I'm going to put in a due date because I want them to see it coming up, and I'm going to put it in here, and it will be due at 9 a.m., same time is what I'm going to have the end date. So you can have a start date on your quiz and a due date. You don't really need to have that end date in there. Remember, end is the last possible time to begin taking that quiz. Next, we're not going to add any release conditions here, but you could add one if you needed to make sure that the students had a previous quiz attempt done before. You could have that under the release conditions. Next, manage special access. So if you have students that needed a special access of extra time for a quiz, you could do that in here. However, I recommend using the class list method to add in special accommodations because that's going to apply to every single quiz you have within D2L. It's going to save you so much time, and I think it's the better way to go. You would probably use this special access to grant a student a different day to write your quiz. So here, if I go and I'm going to keep it defaulted to this one, and I'm going to add a student of mine on Monday. So I'm going to find my student Spider-Man, and I'm going to allow him, but I'm going to say he's going to get special access. So he's going to do on Monday, his exam is going to be open for him as he's not going to be able to do it here on the Friday. I'm going to click save, and now he will be able to do on a different date than the regular other students that I've got. And that's all there is for availability and dates. Next, I'm going to go down into that timing. So you'll notice that it's always going to default to that 120 minutes. And I'm going to select this and I'm going to enforce a time limit. Once I select enforce a time limit, I'm going to go in and I'm going to overwrite the 120, and I'm only going to allow my students 60 minutes to write that quiz. So then after you write in 60 minutes, what do you want the exceeded time behavior? So if a student goes over that 60 minutes, do you want to allow them to continue working? Do you want to stop them from making any further changes? If you do this, they won't even be able to click submit. That's it for their quiz. And here I'm going to allow the students to continue working, but I'm going to score them as a 0. And I'm going to decide what I want to go through after with them with their score. After I've selected, entered in their time, now I can decide how many questions do need to be displayed on that page. So your options are now all questions displayed together, one question per page, or add a page break after each section. I'm going to use this one because I know I have 2 sections in my quiz, so I'm good with that. And here, if you wanted your students to prevent them from going back pages, you can select that here. And if you needed a shuffle quiz, you can select that here by just simply clicking on this box to check it in. However, remember this one is a non-random quiz and it will be questions in the exact order. So I'm going to select that off. Next, under the display, you can disable right click, and this is defaulted always checked on, disable email instant messages alerts within Brightspace as D2L. What this disable email means is if your students start writing your quiz and they stop and they don't click submit, they don't finish that quiz, if this is checked off, the students will not be able to access the email within D2L. So just be mindful of that if you have any quizzes that they start and stop. Under attempts and completion, we can go and add in more attempts for our students. So here you get to select two if you wish your students to have more than one attempt. And how do you want their grade calculation? You can even say, I want my students to retake incorrect questions only or add in special conditions. So what are the special conditions? So here, if you wanted, you could have your students meet a threshold to be ordered and able to access that second attempt. So here, if I put in a minimum, you must get a minimum of 50% to get this quiz number two, or you must not, you won't get a second attempt if you get over 60. So have in your minimum and your maximum, but in this example, I'm going to stick with just the one attempt and I'm good with that. If you needed to be notified via email, just type out your email address and put that in there. I'm good with the attempts and completion. I'm going to collapse that there, and I'm going to move on to evaluation and feedback. So this evaluation and feedback area, it's going to combine the previous one where it was under assessment and submission. So you'll see that these here are from the assessment area, and this here is in the submission. So remember, when the students click submit, you want to show them what after. So you can show them the grade, and you can also show them what questions they got right. So it's going to default here to no questions. So that means my students, when they click submit, they're going to see none of their answers or the questions that they got right or wrong. I can say all questions with correct answer, and I can go from there, or I can even customize that display to them. So here I'm going to go in and I can edit that view, and I can even put in whatever I wanted here, or maybe I wanted my own message and adding my name to it. So, what do you want to display? Do you want to show them the grade attempt for evaluated questions? This is only going to show them the true and false or questions that can be graded by D2L, such as your multiple choice. So, if you have written ones, of course, your students aren't going to get that attempted grade displayed there for them. You can display class average, and you can show whichever questions you want. I'm not going to show any of them here. I'm going to leave that defaulted to no questions. I don't need any learning objectives, so I'm good here with the evaluation and feedback. The reason why I really, really, really love this new quiz experience is you can see most of those quiz settings right here by just glancing. So you'll be able to go and do a spot check going all down that right-hand panel. And in previous ones, you had to click through each tab. The last thing that you're going to need to do is, of course, add in that visibility. So don't worry about that visibility, because students, when it is visible, they will not still be able to take that quiz until the quiz start and end date, but they're going to be able to see it here in that quiz due date. Next up, save and close, and you're done creating your quiz